Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where we have the discussions that are about innovation, leadership, and becoming the CEO of you. I'm your host, Dr. Will, and each week I zoom in a thought leader or practitioner as we discuss strategies that are actionable steps to help you live your best life. I am here today with Erin Bagwell. How are you doing, Erin?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being a guest on the show. I'm always, I'm still surprised that people come on, because
Why are you surprised?
I haven't reached that stature yet that I'm thinking, like some people, they have people who reach out, they say, hey, can you say I want, and people are like, yeah, what? Yeah, but I don't have people. It's just me.
Yeah, same. I answer all my own emails. I schedule all my own calls.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
I think there's something nice about having that intimacy of being able to deal with the person one-on-one,
Awesome. Again, it is nice because I have reached out to people before. Hey, big guest of my show. Need you to contact my assistant.
I mean, sometimes that happens too,
Yeah.
I hear that people are busy, but.
And it's no problem. It's no problem. I'm always just happy to have the discussion because I love the podcast. I love this medium. I love the Internet of Things, because, I'll jump into this, before we start the interview. But, when you had this idea of, I want to do this, you jumped on the Internet with Kickstarter to fund this thing. And it's like, who would ever thought that this would be possible?
Yeah. I mean, the technology wasn't there when I was in film school. It wasn't even an option. So we are at a really cool time where we can kind of tap into new communities and also build our own, which is really cool. You can find everything on the internet, which is really incredible. And I hope the government continues to support net neutrality so that we can continue to find each other and we continue to have this access. It's such a privilege.
Oh, yes. And you talk about film school. I went to film school myself. I didn't shoot digital. I wish I would have been able to shoot digital and edit on Final Cut Pro. I went old school with the 16 millimeter using the Arriflex cameras, editing bench.
Cool.
It was cool until I got some film back from the lab. And as I was trying to move it from the box to the bench, the core fell out. So I had 700 feet of film that I had to roll back on. I was like, wow. Yeah, it took me a long time to do that. But digital is awesome and accessible and now it's just so awesome. People can't even tell. So, my day job is an instructional technologist. And sometimes when I go to schools, teachers will say, hey, can you come talk to these kids about technology and careers in technology? And I would just tell them, how many of you seen The Lord of the Rings? And they're like, yeah. I said, that was shot on digital video. Can you tell that wasn't shot on film? And they're like, that's how amazing it is. So, we've just kind of gone all off on track, just having this good conversation.
Well, you bring a director on, she asks questions, so.
So that's all. So again, I would like to thank you for being a guest on the show. And for those who are watching, will you please introduce yourself?
For sure. I'm Erin Bagwell. I'm the founder of a feminist storytelling blog called Feminist Wednesday. And I am the director and producer of Dream Girl, which is a documentary showcasing the stories of inspiring and ambitious female entrepreneurs. I'm also the author of an ebook called Creative Money, which dives into myths and narrative artists tell themselves about why they shouldn't make money and kind of empowering them to think about the finances of their art as a business. And then finally, I also have my own podcast called Beaver Talk, where I give unsolicited advice to Hollywood about feminism.
Awesome. I love that creatives make that money because
got to do it, right?
You have to. And, in my field, there are a lot of educators who, I do this for nobility. I do this for the kids. I'm not a brand. And I'm like, stop it. Go get your money.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand,
100%.
you know, don't make the sacrifice of going to get a second job at JCPenney or Best Buy when you have skills that you can actually monetize. And
Yeah, I mean, well, you can help people and you can make money. I think there is this huge divide we have around having to be a starving artist and having to kind of, you know, it is such a martyr space to be in. And, you know, we do know that artists can make lots of money.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is just about kind of getting the language and the courage up to ask and to kind of start that process. And I learned that really fast with my Kickstarter, that, you know, sharing something is not the same as donating to it. And if, you know, you're running a crowdfunding campaign to make money, you have to ask for money. And so it was something that throughout my journey with Dream Girl, you know, I've learned so many different facets too. And I really just wanted to share them, which is why I wrote the book.
Ooh, this is going to be a good conversation. I'm so excited. So I grew up literally just watching movies all of the time. Even my wife was like, how do you watch so much TV and movies? I love them so much. And they have left such a huge imprint on who I am and how I see the world, which is one of the reasons why I went to film school, because there were certain stories I wanted to tell. What drew you to filmmaking, and what are the stories that resonate the most with you?
You know, it's funny. I feel like filmmaking found me. And I feel like when I was in high school, I was constantly making videos and stories and, you know, editing in my parents' basement. And I really like came alive doing that. You know, I love creative endeavors. You know, I consider myself an artist. I'm a painter. But there was something about the filmmaking process that really spoke to me. And actually, when I started college, I was an international business major. And I really was attracted to digital media arts and learning about filmmaking, but I was almost too scared to name that. And my mom actually recommended, she's like, why don't you take a class? Why don't you take a 101 and see if it really speaks to you? And I did, and I totally fell in love with it, and I changed my major. But I think there's something really, you know, you hear this all the time, is like, you should be doing the thing that you love to do where time doesn't matter and space doesn't matter. And you feel like so connected. And so I think Oprah calls it like in flow. And for me, like filmmaking is that. So I feel so drawn to it.
So you are the creator, as you mentioned, creator, director of Dream Girl, which when you people look, when you, okay, I'll let you get into it. I'm just so inspired by seeing all the interviews. What was the pain point behind making the film, and how did you go about selecting the women who were in it?
I was really lucky because through the Kickstarter, my audience grew, and I had this amazing network of almost 2,000 people who backed the film. And, you know, I had interviewed a couple of my friends for the Kickstarter trailer. And then once we raised the money and I had this community, people would send me, you know, people to speak to. So, you know, I would get emails of like, you should talk to this person and you should speak to this person. And I really wanted the film more than anything to show kind of like a diverse scope of experience. So I wanted it to be a film that you could watch whether you were kind of starting your career or you were on your third business. I wanted people to be able to see themselves in all of these different women's experiences. And something that someone told me through the Kickstarter trailer was like, you're focusing really on young women. Like, is this story just for young women? And that really stuck with me. And I was like, well, what do I want to do? What's my intention with this? And then we started interviewing and stuff. And I was like, okay, like, let's interview like everyone. Like, let's show this diverse range of womanhood and, you know, starting a business and, you know, family life. And actually our oldest entrepreneur is 83 years old. Her name is Clara Villarosa. She was the founder of Human Bookstore in Harlem and is running Villarosa Publishing. And she's like everybody's favorite character because she's this older woman who just, you want to grow up to be like. And so really I was informed by my audience, and I was just also really inspired. I tried to find women who people could fall in love with. And I really chose intentionally women in the film who I deeply cared about, whose businesses I thought were really successful in their own ways, and that you could learn from, you know, and like I said, with a diverse range of backgrounds and industries and ages, I wanted you to be able to see the scope of what women are capable in business.
So there's an interesting story behind how you connected with your partner, Kamal, for this collaboration. So how did this come about, and what were some of the challenges you faced in completing the film?
Yeah, so Komal met me she found me. She read about us in Marie Forleo's newsletter, and she contacted me. And, you know, when she tells the story, she just says, I take like 3 days to email her back. And I think it was like only 3 hours. And she wanted to come on as an investor, but there was something about her that I really liked and that I was really magnetized to. And I asked her to come down to New York while we were shooting. And she was like there with us at like 5 a.m. when we were cleaning the apartment, and just like all hands on deck. She did makeup. She was just kind of like a be all end all of helping us on set. And I was like, there's something here, you know, so we kept talking, we kept doing check-ins about the business. At first she was thinking maybe she wanted to help us with partnerships. And then our relationship really grew, and she wanted to run our distribution entity and wanted to kind of take this community that we built and monetize off of it and bring the film to them when it was complete. So we ended up becoming co-founders, and she's a producer on the film. She's actually, our story of kind of her moving to New York is in the film. So it's a really cool story of sisterhood. And she brought a lot of passion and energy and kind of just amplified the message that I wanted to do. And then as far as, you know, setbacks and things that happened, she actually got cancer 2 months before we were going to premiere the film, which, you know, was devastating and totally rocked our team. And I think emotionally, you know, you're so close to the end of finishing something, and there's so many emotions around that. And then, you know, we have this huge health scare crisis, you know, however you want to name it. It really, again, like shook our team, really tested, you know, our friendship and our partnership. And Komal is now cancer-free. She had a surgery or two, and she's doing really well. And actually, she made the decision to move back to Canada to kind of take the year off and to decompress and, you know, to kind of emotionally process kind of everything that had happened. So, yeah, she's in Canada. She's running her newsletter still, which is really great to see. She publishes content and kind of shares her insights and her learnings about the process. But I think that was for sure the hardest thing we went through.
Wow. And I'm glad she's well. Because you started telling the story, I was like, ooh.
I know it's always, I'm always kind of, sometimes I share it when I speak to people and sometimes I don't. It's such a heavy topic that it can kind of, you know, it's a lot for sure. But I felt like I could go there with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You know, as of late, there's been a lot of talk, particularly in Hollywood, about the lack of opportunities for female directors and pay equity amongst men and women. So what does the startup space look like for women? And are there any industries that are more friendlier to women than others?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it's interesting. I'm really excited by the Time's Up and the Me Too movement. I think it's really great to get these stories out there and for women to be able to speak their truth. I mean, for so long, we've kind of been gendered to, you know, be quiet about our experiences, that it's just part of the culture. So it's really incredible, which we saw at the Golden Globes. You know, women are speaking up and they're taking up space, and it's such a joy to see. And I will say, in the startup space, you know, I think everything comes back to money, and getting financing for your business, getting exposure, PR for your business are still huge hurdles that women face. You know, 3% of venture capital dollars go to women. So when you think about the scope of, you know, what that money could look like at 25%, you know, or at 40% or 50 or 60, I mean, we're not giving women the access to be able to grow their businesses. But it's interesting, women actually make 12% more money than men run startups. So, you know, women are scrappier. They're doing more of their homework because they know that the resources are not as available to them. They're actually working harder to get their companies to make more money, which is really fantastic. So I think we definitely have a lot more work to do. And hopefully people will continue to, you know, share and support movements like that.
I'm just wondering, and I know I have a certain question about this later, but in your experience in launching this business, because, you know, it's one thing to have a love for it, but you can't eat. So you have to, you know, mention earlier, you know, you got to monetize what you're doing. And the people that you have met, whether it's Marie Forleo or Godmother Oprah, what sort of have you learned about the hustle and what's necessary to put the work in every day?
I think, you know, I think the main thing when we look at like these really big icons like Oprah and Marie is just the consistency. I think that's like really, truly number one. We hear these overnight stories of success. And I was with my husband last night and we had never heard of this one person. Their video went viral. And I was like, look up when they started their YouTube channel. I bet they've been doing it for 10 years and we've never heard about them. There's always that backstory of people who are putting the time in, who are putting the work in. And it takes forever, right? For people to build momentum, to build their audiences. And I think consistency and continuing to do the work and showing up for the work when nobody else does. I think that's like the biggest thing is sometimes you have to believe in it yourself and you have to, you know, take the risks and spend the time, even when nobody else is around. I think that's a really big thing because we're looking at, you know, Marie was working as a life coach for 15 years before Marie TV really blew up and she made $1 million. So when we're looking at like numbers like that, it's like, okay, like that's the expectation. And when I talk to people who are starting businesses, it's like, you know, give yourself 5 years, give yourself 10 years. Like, let's take the pressure off of things becoming viral or happening overnight because that's not the reality.
Yeah, I love that because like this is season 4 of my podcast. And I really feel now that I am in sort of my own where I need to be as a host. And I've switched directions of my show. So we're now focusing innovation, larger issues, but particularly I want to talk about sort of the edupreneur and entrepreneurship and how educators, because we're much of my audience, can go out there and seriously better themselves, put in the work and go make their money. You know, and people laugh, and I've had someone even question sort of my integrity of, Will, you're always talking about this money. But in order for anyone to get to the next level, you have to know where you want to go. And then you have to make sure that day in and day out, you are making positive steps in that direction to get there. And to just sit back and just, I hope it comes. I hope it comes.
Well, you got to ask for it too, right? And we're seeing that. I mean, Oprah is a great example, you know, Marie too, of asking for the money and building audiences and communities and trust with them so that when they have products or books or things to sell, you know, the audience is there to listen. I think trust is a huge part of, you know, why their businesses work, but they absolutely ask for it. I mean, Oprah's, you know, invested in so many amazing companies and she's constantly has her eye on the ball. And, you know, I think something that my friend Sarah Carson says is like making money is part of her feminism. And like, what can you do if you were a richer person? And what would you do with your abundance? And like, how would you spend it? And I think we need to I think we kind of villainize people with a lot of money or a lot of access. And I think that's coming from a place of like scarcity and fear. But think of the impact that you can have, you know, when you are abundant and when you are making money. There should be no shame around that at all.
And the one thing I love about her, as well as you, and I don't know you personally. I'm just saying this from reading interviews that I've seen, that I've been able to read online and watching all the videos, is that you completely own who you are and the work you do. And that is incredible. I mean,
what do you mean by that? I'm just curious.
Well, you know, some people put stuff out there and it's like, okay, or they're trying to be the next Gary Vee, or they're trying to do this, or they're trying to make moves that they think will pay off, as opposed to saying, look, this is me. I'm putting all my chips on the table.
As opposed to actually doing the work.
Yeah. You know, I'm putting all my chips on the table. I'm going to do what I believe in and own myself, all of it. And I'm just going out for it. And if people love me, they love me. If they don't, then they were never meant to ride with me in the first place. And so when I have read the interviews about you and watched the interviews that you've actually done, I'm like, this person owns who she is and where she wants to go. So that's one of the things I'm like, I got to get you on this show.
Well, I appreciate that. That's super nice.
You're welcome. Because not enough people actually do that. You know, in this social we live in, and you have Instagram stars, I guess, people, oh, this is my life. Like, you know, people say, oh, how can I do that? As opposed to just saying, there's nothing wrong with you wanting certain successes, but just owning yourself and just letting it all hang out, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting conversation because social media is and I'm really thoughtful about kind of what I post, but it's such a weird thing because you do want to self-promote. You do want to share your life. Sometimes you want to post pictures of your coffee. Like, it's such a weird, you know, thing that we show the world. And I'm excited for, like, in 20 years when someone can analyze and we can read some kind of philosophical book about kind of why we are so drawn to certain images, or, you know, why we feel the need to post things or share. It's such an interesting, it's really, like, I think comes down to, like, the fact that art is meant to connect us. And we're always looking to be seen by kind of the images we're sharing and what we're producing. So I think it's fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And it has connected us because I'm speaking to you live, in a sense, from different parts of the country, and how people can be on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn and have these conversations and get to know people or join these communities from all over the world. So in that sense, social has been amazing in terms of growing these human networks and really sort of, you know, growing and sharing ideas and becoming better human beings. But then there's other sides of it that people need to just kind of shake off and move on.
Deepak has talked to Oprah about how he thinks the internet is like a manifestation of our consciousness. And so if we're putting something negative out there, then it's kind of going to ripple into the universe. So, like, being really thoughtful about, you know, what you're posting and why you're posting it is kind of a facet that kind of like what we talked about. It's really interesting.
And then with that comes very powerful images. And just like in your film, there's a lot of representation. So whether you're talking about your all female crew, that was dope. And actually having, you know, subjects in your film have a lot of women of color, that was huge too. So how important is reputation, especially when you're talking about entrepreneurship?
I think it's everything. I really do. I think it's so important. And I think it so defines, I think that video is so powerful because it's representing what we see and how we see ourselves. And I think for so long, we've just seen kind of one representation of the story. And I think that's really what drew me to Dreamgirl initially, was like, I know Steve Jobs, I know Mark Zuckerberg, you know, these are household names. Where are the women? You know, where are these women who are, you know, just living their lives, building their businesses, crushing the game? And, you know, nothing makes me prouder than when people can come up to me after the film and say, like, I saw myself in this character, or I saw myself in this character. And it's so funny. We think that we're so divided in some ways. And I have, you know, white men who come up to me and say, like, my favorite person was Clara Villarosa, who is an 83-year-old Black woman from Harlem, you know, or my favorite character is Mariama, who's from West Africa, or Annie, whose parents were originally from China. I mean, good stories translate. And I think it's time for us to debunk this myth that men cannot empathize or identify with female narratives or stories. And representation, I think, it's so powerful. You're like unlocking a key to the subconscious that you didn't even know existed. I mean, when I hear Mariama say she's gonna, opportunity is like a door. You come, if it doesn't, you come, you knock, if it doesn't open, you break it. I mean, that unleashes something within me. And I think for us to be able to show young people the power of these women across any race or age it's transformative, honestly, I think.
And I love that because, on my Twitter feed, I always tell people, like, I'm of a belief of it's time to build our own table. Like you hear so much about the tech space, how their diversity numbers are low. And people keep talking about the pipeline, which that's a lie. But because they're just, the problem is they keep going to the same 4 schools as opposed to saying, wow, let's go to Fisk University, which is a HBCU, huge STEM graduates, very high level school, selective school, North Carolina, AT&T. I can go on, but they don't go to those schools to recruit. And so if you're not going to where these people are and they exist, that's telling me that's not what you really want. You're just sort of saying something. But aside from that, and I'm not saying that we don't need people of color to actually work at those companies, because we need to create and force change on all different levels. There's not an either or. However, comes a time where you stop asking for a seat at the table and you build your own table. And create your own opportunities where you can then bring people up behind you. And so.
Yeah, I mean, not to cut you off, but I 100% agree with you. And I think that the corporate, workforce is missing out hugely on women and people of color for that reason. They're saying, okay, I'm not going to advance. I'm hitting a glass ceiling. You're not offering maternity leave. I'm out of here. And we are seeing kind of this, it's interesting, like WeWork just bought Nordstrom's in New York City, on Fifth Ave. It's like, this is where the culture is shifting. If we're not going to change with it, it's going to crumble, and we're going to build these new structures, which is really exciting. But yeah, I 100% agree. I think people are realizing, like, this system is no longer serving me, so I'm going to figure out my own space, which is a lot of my story too. I mean, I worked for an advertising company where I was being sexually harassed, and I felt unseen at work, and I'm deeply dedicated, and like work is so much a part of my identity. And when I was not being seen in that way, I was like, I have to get out of here. Like, this no longer is serving me. I cannot be here. It's changing my personality. It's changing my confidence. And I think we're seeing that with lots of people. And again, it's so sad, because I feel like the corporate structures are really missing out on a chance to make more money, to create more innovation, to change the world. It's really their loss.
No doubt. It's very, I love it. And I just can't, this internet of things, people, and there are people who just really don't take advantage of this, and not understanding that I can have a shop in Mississippi and get into e-commerce, and now I'm selling my stuff from Mississippi. I no longer need to pray and hope some big box chain store carries my product. I can just sell it where I am, and I can get on social and promote my product and build relationships with customers and other people. And oh man, I can just go in all day, because it's just so exciting to me of just how powerful this is. So from telling the stories of the women and the journeys that you have been on, what are the strengths that women bring to entrepreneurship?
I mean, I think the interesting thing is, I think women's have been gendered in a certain way culturally to be better communicators, to empathize and be caretakers. And I don't think that these are traits that men necessarily don't have, but they're just more prevalent in women because of how we're raised. And so I think we're seeing a lot of that kind of collaborative and quiet leadership. But that being said, I think that men and women share a lot of the same traits. I, consider myself to have more masculine leadership style. I'm really direct. I know exactly what I want. And those are considered more masculine, identifying traits. So I don't think there's, one size fits all for how women are viewed in leadership. I just think we haven't gotten the, access and the space to actually be able to share our truth and what we're bringing to the table. And I think more than, specific characteristics, it's about a perspective. I think that's kind of the number one thing. I mean, to move through the world as a woman is really interesting, just like being a person of color. It's a totally different, set of eyes that you view the world with. So, I think when we're thinking about products specifically that are geared towards women, when women control in their household 65% of purchasing power, it is absolutely insane not to have women on the board and to not have women talking about how this product should be advertised. So I think it's just a conversation around, letting those perspectives serve whatever business they're, gearing towards.
So when I went to that website, I was like, oh, look at Erin. You are on Oprah's Super 100 Creatives list. Okay. They talk.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm like, what? Like you talk. I'm like, what?
I know. Can you believe it? I have a photo actually of me and Oprah on my desk at all times, so I remind myself.
Yes.
Me and O. I'm
like, that's Oprah. And I really loved how she owns it. Like when I read where Weight Watchers said, Oprah, will you endorse? Oprah said, I will if I get a piece.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what? Like, give me some ownership and I'm in. I'm like, because some people, a lot of people don't try to make that type of power move. Mm-hmm. So that was
Oprah knows who she is. She knows what she can do. Weight Watchers was like, we'd be happy to.
Yes, I'm like, go Oprah. So when you are told you are going to make that list and you get the seal of approval of Oprah, what does that feel like?
I think to be totally honest with you, I think I'm still processing it. It happened, I think it's now been maybe a year and a half ago, and it's still something that really shocks me. And then I have to pinch myself. I literally have to have the photo because my brain cannot really compute those two things. But to be honest, anytime I get really good press or, I'm in a magazine or a newspaper or we're on a podcast to be able to talk, I consider myself a vessel for the film and for women and men to be able to get access to and see these stories. And so my heart totally bursts with excitement when I get to share Dream Girl with Oprah and Ava DuVernay and, the other people that I'm exposed to in this list. And I think it just means the world to know that we're getting closer to being able to share these stories on a global scale. I mean, my dream is for every woman and girl to see this movie. And I'm at events where, women will raise their hand and say how do we get this in every school, in the States? And how do we, blast this message out? And really that is what I think my life's calling is to do, is to make sure women can see themselves in these really powerful spaces. And so, when something like Oprah happens, it's a joy for me, but it's also so much of my identity is the work. And that really just means the world to me. And of course, crying and tears and, excitement. And it's funny, my mom has kind of seen the whole journey of Dream Girl, and, she kind of cares about press when press stuff happens, she's like, oh, that's great. That's cool or whatever, But when I told her about Oprah, I mean, we used to watch every day, after school, and, she has been such a huge part of kind of the media development and, specifically for my mom too. But she lost it. She was screaming and crying. And that was really cool to be able to share that with her.
All right. Oprah, if you ever holla at your boy, I'd love to have you on the show.
Yeah, tweet her. I heard she reads all her tweets.
All right, then. So when I release this, I'm going to tweet it out there and put you in there. So hopefully she'll look at it.
Absolutely.
You'll see your name. Because I what's also for me so moving about her is, I'm from Mississippi, born and raised in Mississippi as she was as well. And, you know, we're not necessarily known in Mississippi for a lot of stuff outside of a lot of negative. And to have someone come up and her, you know, being Black and going out there and making all of these moves, and how she has taken ownership from day one of her career and to be what she is now, and still so giving, you know, of her time and money, and so gracious. And, you know, people lost their minds when she was like, "Time's up." And I was like, Twitter and everybody's like, "Oprah for president." Like, everybody was crazy. I was like, wow. Like, yeah, that's one of those things I look at and I go, okay, I got to just keep pushing. I got to keep moving. And I love her, even her career advice when she says, "You're not going to be the next Oprah. I got Oprah locked down. Go be you." You know, you have gifts and talents. Go do you. And so I have made it my point to not try to model my podcast or how I interview people or what I do at work off of anyone. It just try to get better at being myself.
I love that.
And so thank you. So that's why I was like, oh, okay, all right. We've gone all around in all kinds of ways. I've been putting in the questions though, but we kind of veered. So before we go, what have you learned about yourself in creating this project, and what's new for you? Or what's next for you?
I mean, I feel like so many lessons that I've learned through Dream Girl, and I actually have a written series on Feminist Wednesday called A Gal's Guide to Making a Movie, where I kind of document every single part of the journey from, you know, starting the Kickstarter to meeting Oprah. And I, you know, have been trying to kind of share those gems that I've learned, you know, but I think the big thing for me is that I learned something new. Like, I learned one thing or like 100 things every single day. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, this is my first film. It's the first film we're distributing. And every day is a challenge. And every day I wake up and I go, I hope I'm doing the best job I can to get this out there. But there's, you know, it's a constant learning. There's never like one big thing, or it's like thousands of little things every single day. And I think that's why the work is exciting. You know, I get to shape and transform and create something. And I think for me, like, knowing that I have the ability to do that, I think is something that I hold really dear, and that the confidence has built up over time of doing it. And as far as what's new, I am in this really exciting place where I'm exploring new film options, and I'm talking to producers, and I'm so open to receive like the next idea and dive into the next film. I've been working on Dream Girl for like 4 years, and it's time to move on to something really big and exciting. And so I'm kind of in this exploration process where I'm, you know, journaling and meditating and taking meetings and just figuring out that next step.
Okay. Well, if you're ever interested in doing sort of a Dream Girl 2, head to Atlanta.
All right.
Hotlanta is for real with particularly Black business and Black female entrepreneurs. After this interview, I'll tweet, when I tweet this out, I'll actually include you in the tweet with Coriel, who is bossing it. She's a former school teacher who decided I wanted more of a life and jumped into her business, and she's killing it over there.
Amazing. Yeah, I actually have a friend in Brooklyn who's working on a film like that. So maybe there's some synergy there. Awesome.
Thank you again, Erin, for being a guest on the show. This is going to be a bonus episode, meaning it's coming out today.
Cool.
I've started to kind of schedule my shows, but this has to go out today. So I'm very excited about it. So again, you know, thank you so much for being on the show. I had just so much fun talking to you today.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You are welcome. And people, as always, this is going up the video cast will be up on YouTube. I will put this on LinkedIn and Facebook, and this is going on SoundCloud and iTunes. I need you to subscribe and leave some messages, some reviews, holler at your boy, you know, get me going. I'm trying to meet Oprah people. pump me up. So, and other things are coming. So as always, people, invest in you, EDU, peace.